powered by Riverside FM.
Standing alone, somewhat meekly, on the edge of the south side of Deptford Park, London, stands a sign. It's a small sign on top of a standard metal pole, but the sign itself has an exclamation mark inside a yellow triangle, calling your attention to it. And below this triangle, the sign reads, "Caution! Cricket is played in this area." The sign itself can be seen on the image for this podcast episode. In the top corner of the sign is the Lewisham Borough Council logo, designating that this is indeed an official sign. But every time I pass the sign, I feel more bemused. Not once have I seen a game of cricket being played on that particular park, nor indeed have I seen any people seemingly ready to burst into a game of cricket. While I can believe that the park is suitable for cricket and that play does occur, it clearly doesn't do so frequently. Which just leads me to wonder, how and why did someone decide it appropriate and necessary to put such a sign in that place? Surely such a sign is made redundant at the stage where cricket is actually being played, given that both the sign and the game of cricket would be equally visible. Even if it was felt necessary, in what way does one single sign in a particular part of the park mitigate any of the risks that might arise from the game of cricket? It seems that this sign is entirely perfunctory. Is there a sufficient rationale for the council to have spent any money on this at all? Perhaps there is some justification that in order to give permission for cricket to be played, it's a necessary requirement to warn the public in order to achieve the appropriate public liability insurance. That seems possible, but I'd find it somewhat surprising. I've never seen an equivalent sign anywhere else, and indeed I certainly haven't seen them in areas where I have seen cricket being played. Let's take for granted that the sign does indeed effectively warn people. Is there in fact any risk that people should be warned of? Now this is a question which is less clear to me. Cricket is generally quite a calm, sedate game, but there have been a number of instances of freak injuries and indeed fatalities. The cricket ball itself is a very hard object. It's made with a cork centre and covered in leather. If you are struck by the ball in the wrong place, there is a severe risk of injury. Indeed, the Australian cricketer Philip Hughes was sadly killed during a freak accident in 2014, when the ball bowled to him hit him on his neck. There is therefore clearly some risk to the players involved. However, except in circumstances where the cricket ball is struck beyond the bounds of the field and into the crowd, you would expect that risk to be lower for all of the non-players around. But I wanted to test this, so I've had a quick look at research to understand the level of injuries to non-players. I found a study entitled "Spectator Injuries in Sport" from the Review of Epidemiology and Medicine. It documents from its own research the number of spectator injuries across a range of sports. It finds that motorsport has had the most instances of spectator injuries, followed by cycling. For cricket, it found there to be 12 instances of spectator injury. However, the sources and thoroughness and breadth of its research is not entirely clear. It appears to be based entirely on news articles, and these seem to be taken on an international basis. For the 12 instances of injury that the study identified, it quotes the articles themselves, primarily quoting the headlines from those news stories. Those headlines include the following: Spectators on the receiving end of a batsman's fury. Cricket teams face legal bill after mother hit on head by ball. Spectator badly hurt at Hopton chasing cricket ball. 3 spectators injured after section of stand caves in. And flying cricket ball puts crowd in danger. I'm sure each incident could have been quite unpleasant. However, I also note that one thing all of these incidents have in common, with the possible exception of the mother hit on head with the ball, is that they all refer to spectators being injured. And one feature we know about spectators is that they are knowingly attending and watching the game. Such individuals would not need to have been warned that there was indeed cricket happening, unless, of course, they had nodded off whilst watching, or were misguided about what they were watching in the first place, or possibly attending under duress. All of which leads me to think that the risk to spectators from cricket is indeed exceptionally low, and to passers-by it must surely be even lower. I can't see any material benefit from putting up that sign. As to the cost of putting up the sign, I imagine in the scheme of a council budget, it's not particularly high. But when compared to no benefit, that cost still outweighs the benefit. So whilst it's hard to envisage what chain of events led to this sign being put up, nonetheless, it is indeed there and has been there for some time. It sits there boldly, quietly, proclaiming its warning to the very few who might bother to look at it. And, for me at least, it gives me a smile each time I pass it.